This is Grey Merchant Magic. Since the dawn of civilization, humans have been obsessed with the search for immortality. Be it through grails, stones, or lobsters, countless methods have been proposed, though none have succeeded yet. But in the Magic multiverse, people are just constantly stumbling into immortality. Every second classic Magic character became ageless and or unkillable through a wide variety of accidental or coincidental means. With so many methods for casting aside the shackles of death out there, how is the discerning wannabe immortal to choose what's best for them? Fortunately, by looking at a number of factors, I've ranked every single option for extending your existence in Magic. I guarantee that with the information you receive from this video, you'll be fully prepared to choose the lifespan that's best for your lifestyle. I hold no responsibility for contributing to the Dominarian aging crisis, though. Before we begin in proper, I have a few honorable mentions. I don't consider these options viable for a number of reasons, but I still feel them worth mentioning. If for no other reason than because I know people would complain if I didn't. Maybe I should exclude them for the engagement. Probably best not to. Becoming a Planeswalker before the Mending. This first method is here because it's now obsolete. In those days, Planeswalkers were like gods. They could spend hundreds of years on a single task without issue. Nowadays, though, becoming a Planeswalker has little, if any, effect on one's lifespan. Regardless of the era, though, I wouldn't really consider becoming a Planeswalker an option. Artificially becoming a Planeswalker is exceedingly difficult, requiring the altering of an entire plane to even possibly occur. I would put being a member of a long-lived species, such as a dragon or a Ravnican human, in the same category. One species is generally out of their control. Even those able to temporarily transform into another creature type don't seem to require the long-term benefits of being that species. I would not consider a revival, in which one completely loses their sense of self, to be immortality, even if they live indefinitely after that fact. Eternity as a mindless zombie or ghost just isn't living, in more ways than one. I would place the rebirth rituals of the Rakdos Blood Witches in this category. While they can come back from the dead, perhaps numerous times, they lose significant portions of their memories and personalities in the process. So much of the self is lost that it's debatable whether or not they can be considered the same person afterwards. Another immortality-adjacent phenomenon is a one-off revival. Escaping from the THEROSIAN underworld or convincing an idiot to travel back in time and prevent your death would fall under this category. I would consider this more of a do-over at life than true immortality, as you are put back where you left off and continue to exist and age as normal from there. Next up are two specific cards that mention immortality, both coincidentally from Mirrodin. Beacon of Immortality references the concept in its name, while Platinum Angel does so in its original flavor text. I put these cards here instead of the main list because there's so little information about these respective phenomena that I would find it difficult to judge them against other methods. Additionally, the landscape of Mirrodin has changed so much since our first visit that I can't say with much certainty that these options even exist anymore. I would say that ELDRAZI Corruption removes the victim from the regular cycle of life and death. However, similar to Mindless Revival, little of the original person remains. Additionally, the endgame of an ELDRAZI invasion seems to be the complete destruction of a plane, so the corrupted individual would likely cease their existence eventually. As I was discussing this video with some friends, multiple people independently suggested ETHERIUM grafting as a means for extending one's lifespan. Initially, this made sense to me, however after extensive research, I was unable to find a single clear example on what exactly ETHERIUM does. If anyone knows, please tell me below, because so far all I can see is it being some sort of cosmetic bonus, like a hat in TF2. Finally, after I finished the script, the Planeswalker's Guide to KALDHEIM came out, which mentioned that the plane's current gods drink an elixir that grants agelessness and power. Since we'll likely learn more about this in the near future, I'm keeping in this section for now. On to the main list. I chose the rankings based on three factors. Firstly, the amount of life extension granted. Does this method make you merely live a bit longer than you would, fully ageless but killable, or truly immortal? Secondly, how easy is it to access this method? Does it take a lifetime of devotion and work, or is it something readily available to anyone willing to put in even a bare minimum of effort? Lastly, how will this method affect your quality of life? Will your well-being be unaffected or even improved, or will you experience a fate far worse than death? Coming dead last, and it's not even close, is just living a generally healthy life. It scores on the bottom of every metric. I mentioned a fate worse than death, and nothing represents that concept more than having to do 30 minutes of exercise a day. A lifetime of work, and all you get is, at most, a few more decades, completely unacceptable. And I don't care what the ancient Greeks thought, it's not worth eating fruit to be immortal. Next up is imprisonment in the HELVAULT. While the artifact was destroyed, I don't think that technology is so complex that it could never be recreated in some form. However, even if you could recreate the HELVAULT, you probably wouldn't want to. At least, not for using on yourself. HELVAULTification reminds me of cryonics, and that's more like an indefinite stasis than real immortality. And unlike a cryogenically frozen body, an individual in the HELVAULT is forever conscious in a mind-breaking living nightmare. Finally, you need another long-lived person on the outside to destroy the HELVAULT and release you, at which point you'd be right back where you started, aging-wise. At first, you might think to put eternalization in the mindless revival category. However, the process actually leaves some of one's personality and skills intact. For that reason, I would consider it a minimally viable option for immortality. That said, it's certainly not a great option. For all of yourself that you keep, you also lose much of your mind and fall under the control of the nearest necromancer. Plus, blue just isn't my color. This next one is a little more obscure. If you're a hipster looking for an underground immortality method, this could be the one for you. A character by the name of Vero-Maglon gained immortality and a power/curse of decay by being the first and primary worshipper of the dark god KUBERR. Unfortunately for Maglon, he lost his immortality after betraying KUBERR, and his lover gave birth to the reincarnation of the vengeful god. Between the curse of decay, the possession of your children, and the really insecure boss, I can't say I'd go with this option. Next up is the tuk-tuk method. Turn yourself into that one kid from Sky High by messing with a hedron. One advantage that this option has is ease. Tuk-tuk's official character bio calls him an idiot like 5 separate times. So I feel confident that if he could find that hedron, we could too. Now, this choice obviously comes with some downsides. The complete loss of all physical sensations, goblins tracking you down and eating you in a misguided attempt to steal your powers, and everyone singing that one VeggieTales song at you. I decided to group all of Bolas's schemes into one category, as they all have the same goal and challenges. His endgame was to return to or exceed his power as an Ordwalker, giving him an almost godlike status. The downside to this method is that they require decades of plotting, manipulation, and being a general meanie. In addition to the ethical concerns this presents, the time required places it out of reach of anyone who doesn't already belong to a long-lived species. Finally, this is one of the only methods where a large number of do-gooders will constantly rise up to oppose you, and who wants to go through all that trouble? ERON'S immortality gave him agelessness and the ability to regenerate any injury. He used it proactively, for example, once escaping prison by getting cut up into pieces and then reforming on the outside. On one hand, the spell that gave him his power was remarkably easy to acquire, stolen from a library guarded only by a sleeping elderly woman. However, unlike other immortals, ERON'S scars and pain would never truly heal. Given that we last saw him almost 1,000 years ago in universe, and he had already been killed over 30 times in that short window that we witnessed, I can only speculate on what kind of horrible, misshapen creature he's been reduced to by now. Becoming a Lich is a dark ritual seen across the multiverse. The individual becomes a zombie who retains their memory and personality. They tie their life force to an artifact known as a phylactery, making them ageless and highly difficult to kill. However, there's often some massive drawback, such as a loss of humanity or physical decay. For this reason, Lich-themed cards often have a big downside in return for their power. The process also appears to make you bald, so that's a no from me. Our next method takes us to Kamigawa, where Takeshi Kanda temporarily gained immortality by capturing that which was taken, the child of the plane's supreme deity. While initially acquiring the spirit didn't seem too difficult, and there were no drawbacks to the immortality itself, causing a decades-long cross-planar war is difficult to justify. Plus, I have to assume that the spirits have invested more in their security since then. LILIANA'S demonic deal is famous among players due to its story focus across multiple sets. While the average Infernal Pact places you in debt to a single demon, LILIANA'S digit her to 4. The contract defaulting to no BOLAS should she manage to beat the odds by killing the original partners. While all that baggage would certainly be an issue, it does have a pretty handy escape clause, in that you can just get some dope to take the fall for you. Still, all the potential slavery certainly puts a damper on this method. Squee is perhaps the most egregious example of bumbling into immortality in the entire story. His enemies instilled a Jack Harkness-esque ability to forever return from death on him, basically for their own amusement. Why they chose not to use this game-changing technology on themselves for use in their centuries-long war is beyond me. From my perspective, the most pressing issue with this method of immortality is that there's no way out. Like the elves of Middle-earth, one might eventually grow tired of eternity. Will Squee still live 1 billion years from now? When Dominaria's sun supernovas, will only he survive, alone, in the nothingness of space, trapped in a constant cycle of dying and coming back to hellish life? I pity Squee, for he knows not what he hath wrought. The process and results of vampirification are different on each plane. I originally considered listing each separately, but I soon realized that would make the video exceedingly homogeneous, as the vampires of each plane are similar enough that things would get repetitive fast. The basics of vampirism are similar enough on almost every plane. The individual gains agelessness and often additional powers, such as flight or strength. In return, they must, in some way, feed on other people. For this reason, vampires are often shunned and hunted, though they are equally likely to lord over their peers. Overall, the undeath, blood crazes, monster hunters, and such would be too much for me. At first glance, Joda's method of immortality, bathing in the Fountain of Youth once, seems pretty great. It's an unguarded, unhidden, agelessness-granting artifact in the middle of a developed, easily accessible area. There's one major downside, though. Had Joda not owned a magical mirror that he had been randomly gifted some time before, his agelessness would have driven him insane. To be honest, I expect this to be an issue for every model, but Joda's case is the only one where it's specifically brought up, so I'll use it against the Fountain of Youth exclusively. OLORO'S secret of immortality falls in the middle of the accessibility metric. It is neither simple nor impossible to access, available only to a handful of trusted followers. While the agelessness itself seems all fine and good, there are some clear negatives associated with the process. Firstly, it requires containing a complex balance between the forces of light and darkness, with potentially major consequences should you fail. Secondly, it will make you a constant target for thieves seeking to steal your power, and even worse, an equal number of people will bug you for life advice. Across the multiverse, ensuring that you become a spirit after death is a generally reliable method for a greatly extended, if incorporeal, existence. This is a pretty safe option because spirit destruction is a rare skill in most places. Unfortunately, the ability to make someone into a spirit is equally rare, perhaps leading to difficulties in finding those able to assist you in the process. Finally, it seems like spirits get forever locked into the clothes that they were wearing when they died, which for many would be a fate worse than death. The Cauldron of Eternity is Eldrain's stand-in for the Holy Grail, representing great power at the cost of highly difficult accessibility. Continuous access to the Cauldron grants eternal youth and freedom from magical curses. However, since the artifact is from Eldrain, land of the vaguely sentient and weirdly judgmental appliances, it seems to almost have a mind of its own, only revealing itself to those it deems worthy. Ultimately, the Cauldron is simply too unreliable to count on, but pretty great if you can. Various THEROSIAN gods have been shown to grant immortality in return for embodying their respective values. It would appear that in some cases, this can be done merely by acting in the way they would have anyway. However, given how unreliable and generally jackass-ish most of the gods of Theros are, I'd be hesitant to recommend an eternity of trying to stay in their good graces. Time magic, known alternatively as chronarchy, chronology, clockworking, or time magic, is a unique immortality method in that it doesn't involve reliance on an artifact or another individual. It is possible to acquire the skill with simple studying and resolve. It is also without any major drawbacks, other than requiring some reading. In addition to slowed aging, you gain access to any number of ethically questionable powers, up to preventing someone from ever existing. Next up is the story of Joyra, a Dominarian who gained near agelessness after a chance encounter with magic water. Wait, didn't we do this one already? Oh yeah, that was Joda. Even their names sound similar. Anyway, their respective immortalities are almost identical in practice, but Joyra's method is better because it doesn't make you lose your mind. Now we can talk about the Elixir of Immortality, a liquid that gives you eternal life when you come into contact with it. Come on! This magic water variant scores highest because it seems easiest to access. The bad taste is regrettable, but seems like an acceptable downside, all things considered. Some of you may be surprised by how high I place this one, but I think completion is underrated. Accessibility, there is an entire civilization who wants nothing more than to help you out with this. Amount of immortality, become ageless and escape the cycle of life and death by joining a cause far greater than yourself. Quality of life, get a bunch of cool powers, and live out everyone's fantasy of becoming H.R. Geiger concept art. It really is the complete package. Avatars are some of the most powerful creatures in all of Magic. Luckily, you have the potential to become one yourself. Multiple human and human-like individuals, which I assume covers my entire audience, have been known to ascend to avatar status by sheer spiritual or magical strength. In addition to immortality, you also get cool powers like flight and better fighting. I suppose the constantly glowing eyes could get annoying, but I think it's still worth it. The final, and in my opinion best, method for immortality is ascending to godhood on Theros. While it may seem similar to becoming an avatar, it differs in two key aspects. It's way easier, and it's more fun. All Zenigos had to do to become a god was throw a rad enough party, which would already be reward enough. By becoming a god, you get all sorts of cool perks beyond near impenetrable immortality, like followers, a sick custom weapon, and access to a vast array of new powers, but most importantly, awesome parties. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Did I miss any immortality methods? Do you have thoughts on any of the ones that I covered? Please let me know in the comments. Also, consider liking and subscribing to support me in my quest for YouTube immortality.